I was born in Chicago, Illinois, and raised there. I went to music school, studied music. First year in school, I went to Southside Chicago, studied at Mies van der Rohe School of Design, and then came on out to NIU out in the farmlands outside Chicago, where I studied music for 3 years. And at the end of those 4 total years in school, I was told I had 3 left. And so I thought I should probably start with my life. And so I was never a terribly academically minded person. And since then, I found out actually just a little while ago that I'm like, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm like a 12 ADD. And so I had to find my way through things up until the printing job, which I stayed at as a career anyway, not the job. I'd been fired from every job I ever had, usually, or quit just moments before I would have been fired. And so the idea of entrepreneurship was more imposed on me, I think, than anything else. But you look backward in your life at a certain point, you can always connect the dots. And it becomes very clear that there's an inevitability to certain events. And looking forward, though, you can't connect the dots. And so looking forward, you have to use something else, and that's just a little intuition. And you have to trust your intuition. My little brother bought me a home brewing kit as one of those just fortuitous things that you don't see coming. And making the beer is like learning to play an instrument. It's time and commitment and being willing. But creating a brand was really that's the business that you're in. We make beer as a way to fulfill on the expectations that we create through the brand. And so while the beer is terribly important, of course, and the quality of it and what nuances we might discover and bring to it, it's really about the brand. I only conceived of it as a small business, as just like a cabinet shop. I would make cabinets one at a time. I would make a keg and I would sell it to a bar, and it would be small and manageable and very personal. And I would do that while I was selling printing. So the idea was it was like going to be my avocation alongside my vocation. And I started the brewery just to making private label beer for, I live in a very tourist-heavy area of Marin County, north of San Francisco. And so the bars look for things to set themselves apart. And so a private label beer would be something that was attractive to them. It turned out that was. But that had its limits, and the limits would keep the business very small. And when I realized that the economics of brewing didn't really allow you to be as small as I had first envisioned it, I realized I needed a brand. What I've learned in life is that I think that life is more a process of elimination. You don't actually know what you want. You have some ideas about what you might desire and what seems attractive, but the truth is the things that you know concretely are the things that you will not tolerate anymore. And so, at some point you might find that the life that you were living no longer satisfies you. And at that point, then the question becomes, what are you willing to do? And that might be, are you willing to quit your job and put your mortgage at risk? Are you willing to raise enough money to where you only own 20% of the company that you'll now be 100% responsible for going forward? So it just comes down to what are you willing to do? No matter what idea you start with in beginning a business, I think you're going to be wrong, because you can't know it until you're in the midst of it's like you're standing there on the corner and you're looking into the intersection. You won't know if it's really safe to cross the street till you're in the middle of it. And at that point, you modify your next decision, So exposure to the actual idea, exposing the idea to the world and seeing how the world reacts to it will always bring news, and most of it won't be good. But it's like, if you think of a painter, he stands there in front of an empty, blank canvas. The hardest thing to do is to make that first stroke on the canvas, because at that point, now the canvas has become something where before it was nothing. And all I would say is I mentioned doing the coupon businesses and stuff, and all of that was about trying to begin to kind of create for myself an outline of how to make decisions about a business. So the question about, is an idea good enough? It's probably not going to be good enough, and you start with that on the first day. And then you go out and it's a never-ending process of modification. And if you are committed enough to it, then eventually you will modify it into its perfect form, and it will interact perfectly with the world. But it might not be the idea you started with. And there's no failure in that.